Hello and welcome to the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. On this podcast, we have coaches and players from all the levels of baseball covering things such as people's journeys to where they got to, the development process, coaching, and of course, recruiting. And again, I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. My background is 30 years as a college baseball coach. I'm a current college baseball recruiting advisor. For more information about what I do, please visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. On today's episode, we have the man, the relentless, the tireless Steve Trimper. I've known Trimp for a very long time, and we kind of did the normal course of events, covered his background growing up, what he did as an athlete. We talked about his recruiting process. At first, he went to Elon before he transferred to Eastern Connecticut, where he played for Bill Holowati and won a national championship. And then talked about the start of his career, where he went from Wentworth, and then he coached at University of Vermont, which of course no longer has baseball, where he got his master's. He then took over as head coach at Manhattan and did a tremendous job with not a lot of resources. We talked about how he got players from Florida and really built that program. He then, of course, took over at Maine, was the head coach there for years and did a tremendous job building the facilities there. And then since 10 years now, I should say, since 10 years, 2015, he's been the head coach at Stetson, where he's done a tremendous job. Had great seasons, including 2018, one of the best seasons you can ever see in college baseball. We talk a lot about Stetson for people that don't know it. Of course, the home of Jacob deGrom and Corey Kluber. Talked about the facilities there. We also discussed his book, Walkoff Winning, and talked about the Mohegan Sun Mohegan Sun event, where he's been a staple as a speaker for every year that the event has been going on. And then, of course, we covered a lot of things in the modern college baseball world, because Trimp kind of knows the ins and outs more than anybody's on committees. He has access to things. So we covered a lot of bit of, that information as well. I'd like to remind you that this podcast is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the World Baseball Coaches Convention, which takes place every January at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Uncasville, Connecticut, January 15th to 17th, 2026. There's a great group of speakers, as there always is. It's a great venue. There's tremendous vendors. There's breakout rooms. There's a batting cage area with live demo. There's an infield with live demo. There's a coach's social. It's just a really good event to obviously learn, but also just to talk baseball in the hallways and on the side, where it really sparks, prior to the season, all things baseball. So please visit their website at baseballcoachesclinic.com. And without further delay, here is my talk with Steve Trimper, head baseball coach at Stetson University. Going to hit record. All right, Trimp, I'm excited that you're here. And I know you had to run around tracking your computer down. So you had just told me before we started, you're at the banquet hall where your first pitch dinner is going to be, and you got Darryl Strawberry speaking there. So that's pretty awesome to start with.
Yeah, like life of a baseball coach, right? You think it's just throwing BP and recruiting. It's organizing golf tournaments and first pitch banquets. And we have our upcoming first pitch banquet in February. And we're really excited that we're doing it at a local venue. It brings in our season ticket holders. It usually gets about 250 to 300 people. But this year we're excited that Darryl Strawberry is going to be as our keynote speaker. And we'll be doing our ring ceremony from last year's championship team that we had in 2025 that went on to the regionals and had a good showing. So yes, I was running to my office to do the podcast with you, and I forgot my bag, my computer up there. But so here we are, and we can talk some baseball now.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to have you here. And everyone who knows Trimp knows the man's got some energy. Like I want to come to your house and just see you. Do you actually sleep at night, or you just like keep on working through the night?
No, I crash when I go home. You got to if you burn hard. You burn white hot, I said. You got to be able to decompress. So I either go fishing on my boat,
good for you,
or I go home and just crash. That's my out time right now, or visit my daughters.
Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously we know each other pretty well, and I know a majority of your background. There's a couple of things I don't know, so it's actually where I want to start. Where were you born and raised?
Yeah, so I grew up in Newton, New Jersey,
okay,
which is in the northwest corner of New Jersey, way up in Sussex County. Was born and raised there. My dad was a high school football coach, a high school wrestling coach, and an athletic director at 𝐬𝐝 High School.
Yep.
And I started playing baseball and football young and gravitated towards baseball. I think my whole family was football people. I was really the only one that played baseball, and had a good high school career. And back then, you didn't have travel baseball, as you know.
Totally.
We played Legion baseball and had good teams, and was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to 𝐸Lon College at the time. Now it's 𝐸Lon University.
Yep.
So I went down there for a year and had a great experience, except my coach, who was Rick Jones.
Wow.
Coach Jones ended up leaving and went on to Georgia Tech and then eventually to Tulane. And ironically, my teammates was Mike Kennedy. He was our catcher, who's now the head coach at 𝐸Lon.
Wow.
And my dorm mate is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿, who's at Texas. So
really? Oh my God.
A little coaching tree. So I ended up playing a year there, and then I transferred back. I wanted to go closer to home and get back. And so I ended up at a funny story. I was going to go to the University of Vermont, which was a school that recruited me out of high school, Bill Courier.
Wow.
And I got lost driving back home from the visit, and I ended up in a town called Willimantic, Connecticut. And it's a true story. I got lost, and I asked the guy for directions at the Extra Mart in downtown Willimantic, and I had an 𝐸Lon baseball shirt on. And he said, well, 𝐸Lon baseball. He's like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm transferring to Vermont. He said, what are you going to transfer there for? I'm the head coach at Eastern Connecticut. My name's Bill Holowati. So I ended up taking a tour, and I was like, you know what? This is a pretty cool place. So I ended up going and playing for Coach Holowati for 3 years. That's how I ended up in the Northeast. And, becoming, I guess my first connection to the New England area was when I went to Eastern Connecticut as a player. And then certainly my coaching career, right after I got done at Eastern as a player, I was the JV baseball coach for Coach Holowati for a semester. And then he was fortunate enough to get me recommended to go to the AD at the time, ex-baseball coach AD at Wentworth. His name was Lee Conrad, and he hired me to be the co-coach up at Wentworth, which was my first baseball Division III job, was being a coach at Wentworth in Boston. So, and then from there, I went on from there.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Time out on this. So, a couple of questions. I did not know that story. That's insane. By the way, it's insane. Yeah. How did you get? Do you remember what got you to 𝐸Lon in the era before big recruiting? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a great story. A great question. So in our league that I played in New Jersey, it was called the SCIL back then. So some of the teams were like Sparta, Pope John, Hopatcong, Lenape Valley, Walk Hill Valley, Newton, Kittatinny, where I went, High Point. The coach at Walk Hill, he's from North Carolina, and he knew that level of baseball. And back then it was NAIA baseball.
Oh,
so that was 𝐾𝐨𝐬𝐫𝐿,
yeah.
That was High Point, that was 𝐸Lon, Lenore Ryan,
Gardner Webb, maybe
Gardner Webb,
yeah,
all that was in that league. So he called down to some of those coaches, and I remember I drove down there with my dad, and we did a visit of all those schools in a week, and they try you out with a team. Wow. So you literally show up, you take BP, you throw in fall baseball. So my senior year around football games, I went down and visited all those schools and settled on 𝐸Lon. Coach Jones recruited me, and I thought it was a good fit. And there was a kid named Mike Barnes, who was from Sparta High School, which was a competitor of mine that was already a freshman there. So I knew somebody there. So that's how I ended up at 𝐸Lon.
So that is very interesting. And that's really informative, because I actually didn't realize those were NAIA schools. And of course, recruiting, yeah, you could come work out and they could just tell you right then and there if they like you, right?
Yeah. And, there were so many great schools, but, back then it was a different era. So our fall baseball season, when I was a freshman, was playing probably 30 baseball games against Duke, UNC, NC State, Wake Forest. I remember running around playing all those schools. And then, of course, that year we went like 40-6 and ended up, losing to Lewis and Clark in the NAIA World Series, which is another cool story that I played on the 1889 team in 𝐸Lon. That was one win away from winning the NAIA World Series. Wow. I transferred to Eastern, and we won the Division III World Series. So I was one win away from having two different levels of college baseball rings.
That wasn't the following season, was it?
It was.
Yeah. It was.
Yep.
Wow. Because I knew that you had won it there, but I didn't realize that was in essence your sophomore year, right?
Yep. It was my sophomore year at Eastern. Yep.
Okay. So you get lost and you meet Holowati, and that changes your life, basically.
It's the craziest thing. Yeah. And the funny thing is, Bill Courier, who's the coach at Vermont, I was going to transfer there. And then I played for Bill Holowati after that all got tobaccoed. And then I end up there. I go to 𝐸Lon, I go to Wentworth. I'm coaching there for 2 years. And my girlfriend at the time, who ends up being my wife, she gets her master's degree done, and she gets hired by UPS. Now, this is 1993. There was no females working for UPS.
Right.
And if you know about UPS, you got to start out as a packer, a truck loader, then a driver, and then you eventually wear a suit. You go be a corporate person. So they hired her as account executive right away as a female because they needed to get more female employees.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, by the way, you're going to Williston, Vermont.
Mm.
That's where you're getting. And I'm like, well, there goes my baseball career as coach because I'm going to move with her. So we moved to Vermont. I take the baseball AD job at Richford High School. I was going to be a phys ed teacher at Richford High School in northern Vermont. We get an apartment in St. Albans. A week later, I go to a Vermont Expos New York Penn League game, and who do I see? Bill Courier at the game. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, just took this high school job. He's like, funny story. I got a graduate assistant job open. Do you want to be the grad assistant? So I ended up resigning after taking that job a week and going down with Bill. So eventually I got back with Bill anyway, because I was his coach for 4 years. I was his assistant coach up at UVM.
Unbelievable. So there's a couple of interesting things there. It seems like, based on probably your dad, were you pretty much set even in college? Hey, I'm gonna teach, coach somehow, someplace. Yes, right.
I was a phys ed major. My dad was a PE coach and then became an AD. And I was like, I'm going to go to Eastern, get my PE degree, go back and coach high school baseball, high school football, and be an AD someday and just follow that track. I mean, I wanted to be around sport, and I love to teach. I was really kind of into it at that young age. And so that was my plan. And it just got, I honestly, the summer I graduated, I went back home and started doing my landscaping job and was looking for teaching jobs. And that's when the Wentworth thing popped open, and Bill had me go up there, Holowati. And, my girlfriend at the time was living there. So I was like, that's how I ended up getting in college baseball, totally by accident.
So, I mean, there's a decent shot, if a couple of things don't break right, you're probably an AD at the right? You'd be an AD, you'd be a teacher, you'd be a high school coach, 1-2 sports, right?
Yeah, I'd be a principal or an AD right now, probably in northern New Jersey, and probably coaching a sport or two.
Wow. So we did pass over this stuff. Did you play high school football?
I did. Yeah, I played high school football and baseball. That was the two sports I played. I actually was going to go I had an offer to play Division II football and baseball at East Stroudsburg.
Wow.
Which was right where I grew up. And I chose to just do the baseball route out of high school.
What did you play in football?
I was the tailback. I returned the punts and kicks, and I was a cornerback. So I played two. Back then, you played both ways,
Right. And
played on some good teams. It was good football level in New Jersey, and I really enjoyed it. I got beat up a little bit. I was the guy that had the ball all the time and loved taking the hits.
Do you at this stage, 2025? I'm sure you see this. Maybe different in Florida. Of course, I know you recruit all over. Do you get a lot of incoming guys that played football in high school?
No, unfortunately, Wayne, you've done this as long as I have too, and at the same level, meaning the Division I level. I think the two-way guys, the two-way athletes, it's been at least 10 years.
Yeah.
I think Mike Francoso, my shortstop at Maine, who got drafted in 2013, was the last guy I remember. He played high school hockey. He played high school football. They allowed him to get a waiver to play on the basketball team for Portsmouth. Wow. And baseball. He won 4 state championships his senior year, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world. There was my two-sport athlete or my dual-sport athlete. And I can't remember a guy, I'm sure there's one mixed in there that, I think today's day and age with kids, they get sucked into doing travel baseball. They get sucked into doing winter ball, doing camps, trying to showcase themselves off. And I'm sure it happens in basketball and soccer's all the same thing.
Right.
My daughters played Division I ice hockey. And yes, they played 3 sports in high school. And as soon as they go to prep school, they got, they're playing 2 sports. And then as they commit to a college, they're just doing full-time hockey and travel hockey and lifting and doing strength and conditioning. So I think it's just the system that we have now kind of takes away that. I don't like it because I still love the competitiveness.
Agreed.
And there's a big thing about winning, like the more sports you play, I feel like you win more and you understand about losing. So, that's the part that, when you get a winning athlete on your program, we all know that that's a gene that we have never taught. It's just something that they've learned through these different things. Not to say that you can't have that winning gene just playing baseball from 9th grade on.
Fair.
It's just that I always love that part about people playing multiple sports because they learned how to win in a lot of different things.
And just to kind of almost follow that up, do you now, I'll just take this year or last year on your Stetson roster, Do you have any two-way guys?
Yeah,
You
we
do.
do. I've always had that. That's something
Good.
I think that's been very important to us. I can go back to my Maine days. I had Mike Conley, who was the greatest story ever. We brought him in as a shortstop. He backed up Mike Francoso. He wanted to play so much, didn't play much as a freshman. Then he came back his sophomore year. He wanted to be a pitcher, so we stuck him on the mound. He was one of our, weekday starters. Then he goes down to the Cape because he's local, and Stevie Englert over at Harwich calls me up, who's still the coach there today, and says, "Hey man, he's an athletic dude. Can you mind if he catches for a couple of games until all the guys come from the World Series?"
Right.
Sure. He ends up becoming a catcher down the Cape. He comes back his junior year. He wants to catch. We catch him. Never caught before in college. He becomes our starter. He's also our weekend starter. He gets drafted as a pitcher, but he also was the player of the year and the pitcher of the year in the America East Conference that year. So there's your two-way story.
Yeah.
Brooks Wilson, my second year here, the year we went to the regionals and super regionals, I should say, with Logan Gilbert on the mound, we end up, Brooks Wilson pitches for me for 1 year, never hit in college, really good athlete, gets drafted in 20th round, and I go up to the Cape to try to talk him back for his senior year. And he says, "Coach, if you promise I can have a shot at being a two-way guy," I said, "Absolutely." Well, he goes on to be our best hitter, our four-hitter, and wins the John Oldroyd Award winner, which is still the plaques in my office today. So I think that I've always been to that, but to go to this now with roster limitations with 34 men, I think it's going to be really important that you're going to have some guys on your roster that can do two things. They might not be your frontline guy,
Right.
but you're going to need your center fielder or your third baseman or your first baseman to pitch, because it's going to be a dual guy when you're going to be capped at 34 in a roster spot. What happens when you lose two guys, which we all do in our career? All of a sudden it's February 5th and a guy goes down with Tommy John in your last scrimmage. And then on March 1st on weekend 4, another guy goes down with Tommy John. You're going to have somebody that's going to be able to eat that up. And I think that's going to come from two-way guys.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And I was going to save this when we start talking Stetson, because I want to cover some other things first. But I do have in my notes, you weren't there at the time, but you have one of the greatest two-way guys of all time in Jacob deGrom that came at Stetson, right?
Yeah, Jacob's story was he played shortstop and wanted to play shortstop and just really started getting on the mound his junior year as a closer, sophomore year as a closer. And then his junior year, he was the starting shortstop, and they had so many injuries on that team. And I've heard this from Jake, and I've heard it from Coach Dunn, who was here, that they forced him into being a weekend starter and kind of took him out of shortstop. And he wasn't happy about it because he wanted to be a two-way guy,
Right.
but it seemed to work out for him. And Jake's a good dude. He comes around our field probably 25 times a year. He still lives in the land here. And
wow,
he's a very big part of our program, and we're really proud of him. But don't be surprised if he can go out there and field his position all these years he's had in the major leagues, because he's a pretty good shortstop.
Well, that's a great point. And in fact, listen, we may cover one thing. I have a complaint about extra innings this game last night, which we may get to. But I used to like watching him hit as a Mets fan. Like the guy could actually swing the bat, and I get it's probably better for the game that they don't. But I did actually enjoy watching him come up and showing his athleticism.
I think the coolest story is when the fans here listening to this go and Google Jake deGrom's college home run. You're going to see the one home run he hit his junior year was in the ASUN tournament at Lipscomb, and it was off Chris Sale. So there's a video of a Florida Gulf Coast pitcher named Chris Sale and Jake deGrom taking him out the yard. So that's his college home run that year.
Wow, that's really cool. And I remember back when I was at Sacred Heart, we opened in 2010, and on the mound was Chris Sale, 50 scouts. And I remember I tell people all the time when people would give me a compliment, you're a good baseball guy. I go, I saw Chris Sale and said, that dude will never make it. That's what I said, because he was so skinny. He's never gained an ounce, and he's going to the Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible. But to your point earlier, Zach Short, who I coach at Sacred Heart, who's played with him, goes, that is one competitive dude. Yeah, Chris Sale, one competitive guy. But let's kind of back up a little. So you're at UVM with Courier, right? Who Courier is just one of the great people on the planet. I mean, he's just a great guy. We all know, of course, UVM would go on to drop baseball, but you then left UVM. Did you get that? Was it to leave to get the head coaching job at Manhattan?
It was. So I wanted to be a head coach, and Bill was great to me, and we had great teams. And Bill didn't have a ton of resources. There was not a lot of scholarship back then. And I interviewed for a couple of jobs. I was there 4 years. So that year 3 and 4, I interviewed for the MIT job. I know I wanted to try to get that. And I was looking at some other jobs, and then the Manhattan job opened up, and I applied for it. And ironically, it was a job I don't think anybody wanted. And the only reason why I got the job was at Vermont. I was a grad assistant for 2 years. And when my grad assistant came up, I was kind of like, what do I do now? Because they didn't have a full-time assistant. And the AD at the time at Vermont was a guy named Rick Farnham. And he's like, hey, Trimp, you've done a great job. I want to, have your career and help you out. He goes, what do you think about selling the dasher boards of the rink? And we could offset your salary. I can make you the director of marketing and the assistant baseball coach and give you a full-time salary. And I was like, done. Let's do it. Well, fortunately for me, they had Martin St. Louis, Tim Thomas in goal, and Eric Perrin, who they all went on to be NHL guys. And they were a Frozen Four team back then when I was doing this. So those boards sold themselves around Burlington. However, the Manhattan job was not a full-time job. So the AD there who hired me, Bob Burns, he went to President 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐬𝐿, Brother 𝐬𝐮, and convinced him to make it a full-time job so I could move there. And I was actually the director of sports marketing and a part-time baseball coach my entire time I was at Manhattan. And what did? I went in there, didn't have very much marketing background. I was able to get exclusivity for UPS to be the shipper of the school. And I did that whole Coke Pepsi war. We brought in Pepsi. They did $1 million deal with the university. I looked like a hero. And I never marketed ever again in my 7 years. So
oh my God. This is awesome, dude. It's funny. One of the things I'm reminded of, I know it, but I'm reminded of every time when I talk to really good, successful people like yourself, they paid some dues, man. Like you paid some dues and Manhattan, Manhattan's still going there. I don't want to throw Manhattan under the bus, but I remember going there when you were coaching. I'd go, this is a tough joint around here. This is a tough place to coach,
Well, that was a program that like I said, nobody wanted. They won 5-6 games a year. And I said to myself, I'm either going to make my career or I'm going to end my career here. And, we had no home field. Bob Burns, when he showed me on the visit, we went to Van Cortlandt Park, which maybe somebody on the call, people know. So we go across the Broadway. We walk down from the field. There's barbed wire. And we get to Van Cortlandt Park, walk across this track, and there's like clay and a bench, 2 benches, and another backstop. And when I say clay, there's like a remnants of a mound. And he literally picks the fence up. And I'm in my suit, my interview. He pulls the fence up like we know when we're going to crawl under a fence. And he goes, go. And I go under and I do for him. And I'm like, so you're building a field here? He's like, this is your field. And I'm like, oof. So, I left there like, man, do I take this job or not? And, Bob was like, look, man, I'll give you all the tools in our toolbox that we can. And he gave me some scholarships. He gave me a $4,000 assistant. I remember that was a big deal. And he gave me the ability to raise some money. So we raised money for a sod field. So we sodded it ourselves. Here's another great Manhattan story of my life. I was a landscaper, and that's what I did when I was high school and college. So I went out there and I got the transit and I leveled everything off, topsoiled off that infield at Van Cortlandt, which you've been to many times. This is October after fall ball. We picked up all the glass, and me and the guys, we ordered the sod. We rolled it all out. We got it all right. Now, mind you, we had no water. So I'm out there with a garden hose trying to water it, running across the track, and I leave. My first fall, I go home. I lived up in Putnam County, so I had to drive an hour home. I come in the next day at 5, 6, 7 in the morning, whatever it was, to water the field. The sod's gone. It's gone. I'm like, what the? And if you notice in the Bronx, everybody's got like their sidewalk and that little flower box and then the road. And so for about a mile around Manhattan, Van Cortlandt Park, everybody had green sod. They went down, free sod, roll it up and take it and put it. And I was like, so I learned to get hooked up with the parks. A guy by the name of Ray was the guy that we ran the parks. And he gave me all the snow fencing that no one down here in Florida knows when I tell the story, but the snow fencing. And I pneumatically post-driven in all these posts. And I ran about a 1/4 mile of snow fencing all around when we resodded it. So no one could get in there because it was too much of a problem. And then once it rooted, I would take the fence out. And I did that for my 7 years I was there. I had to resod the field every fall and then keep it protected for 2 weeks until the roots grew.
So, which is unbelievable, especially compared to what you've earned everything you have now at Stetson, that's for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things I could say is I was given the tools to make the place a little bit better, and I had support. And so these are great stories, and we can go on, how many times we walked to school uphill both ways, and all those tough stories. basically my principle has always been, whether it's been, my time at Wentworth in Vermont as an assistant, and then certainly Manhattan College in Maine, and now at Stetson, I just try to leave it better than I found it. I think that's what we all try to do. And I had a great AD that, towards the end when we were playing your teams at Sacred Heart, we were winning 30 plus games. We were, 1-2 in that conference. And, we had a bunch of guys drafted. The year I left, Kevin Layton, my assistant, and Mike Cole took over, and they were able to take that team to a regional. And that group of seniors beat, 𝐬𝐫𝐽 and Nebraska and Miami, and almost went to a super regional with that team. And here's a team that was from Florida kids, from my Florida connections, and a bunch of Bronx kids and Brooklyn and Queens kids, and basically on a field that no one wanted to play on. But that team didn't lose. They were 21-0 at that field.
It's funny because that was going to be my follow-up question. I remember talking to you back then and going, Trim, you got a bunch of dudes from Florida. How'd you, and I think you had told me at the time, you're like, listen, I'm going to find guys that love New York City. Like, it's cool to them to come, and that's my selling point. Like, come play baseball D1 and come and have access to New York City. I mean, so that's obviously something you did to get some really good ball players there.
Yeah, and again, you got stories to the cows come home. So Jerry Albert was the assistant coach at Malloy High School in Queens, and Coach Curran was the famous coach there. Yes, now, we know him as the basketball coach. He had Kenny Aronson, Lou Alcindor. He was connected to Dean Smith, but he also coached baseball. So when I got the Manhattan job, I had to meet Coach Curran. And we started to get Malloy kids. Well, the assistant was Jerry Albert. Well, Jerry Albert, after 2 years, disappeared. Didn't know where he went. Took another job. So now I got Manhattan College in 2002 down in Homestead, Florida, playing spring break. We might remember how we all used to go down there, play at that stadium that was defunct. Well, on my way out of our game against, I don't even know who we played, Jerry Albert starts screaming at me and is like, Trim. I'm like, Jerry, what the heck? He's like, oh, I married a girl from Miami and I moved down here and I took the job at Columbus High School as the assistant for Joe Weber, the brand new coach. I'm like, well, what the heck are you guys doing here? Oh, we're building a new stadium on our campus. So this is where we drive 30 minutes to practice. Hey, you want to meet Joe Weber? Sure. Meet Joe Weber? Hey, recruit my guys. There's no way I can get a Florida kid to go to Manhattan. You'd be surprised. Flew up Eric Nieto. Eric Nieto loved it. He came, he got drafted out of Manhattan. To this day, we're about ready. We just got a verbal commitment from a Columbus kid. It's my 39th Columbus kid that's ever played for me.
Really?
Yep. Between 39. Here, Maine, Manhattan. And that's how my Florida connection started, is that we had more kids from Dade County going up to Manhattan. Then I got the Maine job, and I had guys that wanted to go up to Maine. And certainly I'm in Florida now, so I have a lot of kids from down the Dade County area that now come up here and play for us here at Stetson.
So obviously you take this program at Manhattan, tough circumstance. You even said a job. It wasn't like people were clamoring over it, and you did a tremendous job, which leads you to go to Maine. What was the year that you made that move to Maine?
So I'm at Manhattan for 7 years. Yeah. We had a great team. We were one game away from the regionals, and I'm up in the Cape. My wife has a place in the Cape. We still do to this day. So that's where we go in the summertime with our kids. I think my daughter's like 7 years old. And I'm fishing with my good buddy, John Schiffner from the 𝐬𝐫𝐽. Yep. So we're out in his boat fishing, and my phone rings. We had cell phones now. It's 2006, 2005. Right. And it's Jack Leggett. Now, how did I know Jack Leggett? Well, Jack Leggett is from Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
And his father, Les Leggett, is the longtime teacher at University of Vermont. And his brother, Billy Leggett, lives up there in Vermont. So, and Bill Courier played for Coach Leggett at Vermont.
Okay.
So Coach Leggett played at University of Maine, was a football player and a baseball player at Maine. He went back to Burlington. He started club baseball, eventually got it to varsity. Then he ended up going down to Western Carolina, and then he went ahead and got to Clemson. Well, he coached Bill Courier. So Coach Leggett, my first year there, he's at Clemson, and he comes in and he's working out, visiting his dad. He's working out in the fitness center in Vermont. I'm like, oh my God, there's Coach Leggett. This is the guy.
Right.
And so I got a relationship with him and worked his camps and did things. So I ended up being on the boat, back to fast forward to 2005. I'm on the boat fishing and my phone rings and it's Trim, Legs here. Seven's on the phone. Paul Kostakopoulos just took the Navy job. I'm a graduate. You're the perfect fit for that. You're the perfect fit for Maine. You got to go to Maine. and I'm going to call up the AD, Blake James, up there and get you an interview. Go buy a tie, go buy a suit, drive to Maine. So I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like getting off the boat, I get a call from Blake James, the AD, and he's like, let's visit. And I give, Jack Leggett all the credit. He introduced me to the AD and the people of Maine, and I hit it off with them. And they hired me in 2005 to be their coach, which I stayed there till 2016 when Stetson called me up to come down and interview for their job.
So it's interesting. There's a couple of patterns here. Number one, you get a job, you do great at it. You're also a natural gregarious guy. You meet these people and you're meeting them without, like you're meeting Jack Leggett, not going, hey, I need this guy for a future job. It's just another baseball guy that you're happy to meet. And then it leads to Maine. Now, obviously, a couple of things about that. First of all, it has to be a beautiful place to live up in Maine, right?
Oh,
just lifestyle, nature is fantastic. Obviously, baseball difficult with weather, but you did a heck of a job improving the setup up there, the facilities and whatnot.
Yeah.
When did that happen in your tenure there?
Well, Maine's a really unique place because, obviously John Winkin and before him, Coach Butterfield, they had World Series runs. They went to 6 World Series.
Yep.
Back when it was true regionals back in the 70s and the 80s, you had to win your region. You went right to Omaha. And they had a lot of tradition and a lot of good players that came out of there. And 𝐃𝐨𝐽 did a great job there too. Costi did an awesome job. So I went from Manhattan that had nothing in my mind. We were building everything to now at least I have a stadium.
Right.
And I got scholarships and, I got some things to work with. So the footprint was pretty good, but it was a little dated. Our field was, it's a natural field. It kind of sunk.
Yep.
We needed to put some paint and some putty on some things.
Right.
So my next great person I met in my life to this day is my best friend. And someone that really helped me was the AD that hired me, Blake James. And now Blake was what he taught me in my career. He is to this day is the ultimate fundraiser and relationship builder.
Right.
Blake's path took him to Maine as the AD. He was there with me for about half my tenure. He ended up leaving, going to Miami, became the AD at University of Miami. Was there 9 years. It was a long tenure for an AD. And now he's the AD at Boston College. And he taught me about fundraising and how to connect with donors. So him and I together started to say, hey, let's try to take this, because times were changing. Regionals were done. Now it's the super regional format. Wasn't as easy to get an at-large bid out of Maine, probably impossible at that time. But mind you, you got a population in the state of 1.4 million. You don't have a lot of tax dollars to go to the state university. And you got a fan base that's the only Division I school in the state.
Sure.
And they're expecting hockey and baseball to continue to go to Omaha. So I will tell you stories that the media coverage I got at Maine, my years there was times we went to a couple of regionals. We win, we beat, come back with 1 or 2 wins. And I get off the plane after chartering the NCAA charters you back. And the front page of the Bangalore Daily News is Maine fails to qualify for Omaha for 26 years straight. I'm like, the expectations there are like crazy. There's like 7 media people like, why didn't you guys win and go to Omaha?
Oh my God.
So, but Blake partnered with me and really led the boat in us raising some money to do a facility upgrade. So we were the first team to get a turf field in 2006.
Right.
We have 1 year grass. And I remember sitting there going, hey, guys, with Northeast Turf, which was field turf at the time, do you think we can do like the different shades of grass to make it look like it's mowed? And they were like, we've never done that. So I want to take the claim to fame. Maine baseball is the first field that had different colored turf to make it look like it was mowed. So we did that. We did some stadium upgrades. We did some locker room. And then we ended up after Blake left, we were able to advance that place and do over $1 million indoor hitting facility that's still obviously there today. I had 2 great donors, and the Alphon family and the Mahaney family that did a Mahaney Dome. So we had a covered bubble up there that we could practice. Now, mind you, we played 15 home games. We traveled a ton. We had the 3-week spring break, which was great.
Right.
So there was things benchmarked there that helped us continue to win. And I think we did. We had some 35 win seasons. We had 2 regionals. And then, towards the end of my tenure, it really started to change where it even got harder and harder with scholarships and funding. And I think I left it better than it was. And we had a great run there. And then that's why Stetson came calling. And I think one of the testaments is you always got to get the hot coach, right? That's what we always talk about. So someone that won 40 games and went to Omaha.
Right.
Well, Stetson, when they interviewed me, I was coming off of a 24-win year and a 23-win year. It was kind of like 2 of my records weren't the greatest those 2 years. But Stetson looked at my body of work and what we did over my 11 years there and said, hey, look, let's try that here. And of course, I was given the opportunity to be the big program here. Like at Maine, it was hockey.
Right.
Everybody gravitated and the funding went there. Here, we don't have a football program. We don't have hockey. You know, Stetson baseball has a tradition that's been here for years. So I had a great AD and a president, which I still do to this day, that, you know, we were able to, you know, fundraise almost $10 million for the stadium and what we have now. Plus, you know, our staff is fully funded and, you know, we're entering into the NIL market and all the craziness we're going into. So I think we have a really good setup here. We're a mid-major university, a mid-major conference, and we have a major baseball program. That's kind of how I sell it here.
So, I mean, from a couple of things, the standpoint of going from this top of the country down to Florida, right?
Yeah.
And obviously they came to find you. Was there a connection in some way? Like everything you said so far was, hey, I know this guy, I know that guy, but was this just, hey, they searched and said, hey, let's find somebody that fits what we're looking for?
Yeah, you know, I guess image is something we talk about. Like, never screw with your image. You never know who's watching. And you know, Pete Dunne decided to retire, and we played them those previous 3 years, and we actually beat them.
Right.
So when they were opening this job up, they knew I had some Florida connections from down in Dade, and some of those coaches called the AD, Jeff Altier, the AD at the time, and then Pete called me and said, "Hey, man, you might be a good candidate for this." And I was like, "They're not going to hire a Maine guy." And of course, like, let's go old school. Jack Leggett, he's from Vermont, was up in Vermont. Then all of a sudden he's the Clemson coach. You know, Tim Corbin,
of course.
Yeah, all these guys gravitated down. That doesn't happen anymore. That hasn't happened in 20 years. So I think with Pete's, you know, recommendation, the AD and the search committee put me into their pool of 6. And so I ended up coming down last, which I thought was an advantage. They interviewed all these great candidates who are still working in Division I baseball and some as head coaches. And I did my interview last, and I think I connected with the AD and the people here. And ironically, the last person I met with was the president, Dr. Wendy Libby. And I was like, Libby, man, there's 2 big names in the state of Maine, Pelletier and Libby. Every town's got one.
Right.
Well, go to find out, her husband grew up in �꿑𝐽, Maine. So we end up talking about Maine and this story and that story and all my Maine connections in my interview with the president. And so the president, you know, I found this out later, went back to Jeff Altier and was like, that's the guy I want.
Wow. So
when I landed, I got back to Bangor and my phone had a message. It said, call us. And 5 hours later, after I landed, they called me and said, hey, man, you're our guy. You want to come down and be the coach? So again, the connections I had, you know, got me the job and then just connecting with the current people here.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And this is a perfect time to ask you, because I know Stetson, most people in the baseball world, there's a lot of people that don't know Stetson enough. So before we talk just a little bit about the baseball, just talk about the university.
Yeah. You know, it's, you know, again, I came from the Northeast. So this is a kind of like a Northeast school. It's a private small school, about 3,000 students. It's got a great law school that's on the West Coast over in Gulfport. Our school is liberal arts. It's kind of like a school of business, school of music is our 2 strongest majors, really strong. And it's got a really cool history. Back in the 1880s, it was actually started up by a guy named Henry DeLand. And he moved to this town that was called Persimmon Hollow, which I'm sitting in today.
Right.
And Henry DeLand was from Ohio and he loved music, but it was so darn hard to go all the way down to South Florida and the Keys where all the culture was. So he just decided to start the DeLand School of Music here in Persimmon Hollow.
Wow.
And he ran this school for about 20 years, or actually it was a little bit less than that, about 15 years. But there was somebody else who used to vacation from Philadelphia, and he would vacation down in this area over at New Smyrna Beach, which is 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And his name was John B. Stetson. And he owned the Stetson Hat Company in Philadelphia. Everybody thinks the hats company are cowboy hats out in Texas. It's not. It's still to this day in Philadelphia.
Wow.
So he ends up becoming friends with Henry DeLand. Henry DeLand's going bankrupt. So he ends up buying the university, changing it to Stetson University, starts a school of business, the school of law, because he needs lawyers and he needs people to sell his hats.
Right.
That's how we got our history. And that was about 1900, the turn of the century, and how we've been Stetson since.
Well, now that's good and something I did not know. That's really cool. Yeah, that's what I would describe it to people. It's kind of this almost New England feel-ish school down in Florida, it's a really great campus.
Yep.
Baseball wise, you've had a ton of success since you've been there. I mean, you had a super regional, you've had some tremendous players. You had a great year last year. I mean, you've become in the conversation of the top 25 baseball programs in this country, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have. First off, again, we've had a lot of support, and people here are really into their baseball. Coach Dunn and Coach Ward, which was really the only three coaches of this program because it wasn't Division I. So, Coach Ward, worked here back in the 60s and 70s and then went on to Eastern Kentucky. And then Coach Dunn was here for 37 years. They had tremendous teams. They had 16 regionals prior to me getting here.
Right.
When I got the job, we had a pretty good footprint. I mean, you had Jake deGrom, Corey Kluber, a lot of, Chris Johnson, first rounder, Brian Schneider, first rounder, all these different players that have come through here. So I was able to just try to build off the successes they had and try to see if we can do better. And what I wanted to do was get our staff in order to really recruit the heck out of this area and the Northeast, because I had Northeast connections. Hence the reason why I have a lot of Jersey kids in our team and Connecticut, New Hampshire kids that are doing well for us. And then we certainly did the stadium renovation and partnered with the city of DeLand and really made it a partnership. DeLand is got a beautiful downtown area. It's ranked as one of the top 5 most beautiful campuses in Stetson in the South. DeLand is the #1 Main Street 9 years running in the United States. So you got Stetson, you got 6 blocks of Main Street and all these bars and shops and breweries and eateries, and then you got the stadium. So we partnered with the commerce and all our businesses, and really I saw an opportunity to market the program. All right. So I'm the head coach. I throw BP, I teach hitting, try to tell everybody how to throw strikes, but I'm really a marketer, and it goes back to my roots of Rick Farnham telling me to sell dasher boards at Vermont. And so I have been fortunate enough to have a pitching coach, a recruiting coordinator, a third assistant, an operations person that are funded well, that help me do the day-to-day baseball things and recruit. So, Greg Loveday is my recruiting guy. He went to 2 regionals as a head coach at Wright State and was the head coach over at UCF for 7 years. He's my staff member. Nick Restano, who you guys work together. He was the head coach at 2 different universities in Division I. Now he's my operations guy. My pitching coach, Daniel Latham, was at Tulane. He's a Hall of Famer there and came over. Cam Coons is my hitting guy who, all these positions are fully funded. So I think that we were able to be successful over my 9 years here, which you're right. We had, Logan Gilbert and Brooks Wilson. And, I recently had Miola we had 5 guys drafted last year. Those are built off of the successes from before, but we were able to take it to the next step. I wouldn't say the next level. We're just trying to go up another step. Right. So what did we do to do that? Well, we had 2 years into it. We recruited our fannies off and we hosted a regional. And here's a stat. There's great baseball in Florida. I mean, you can go to UCF, South Florida, FAU, FIU, Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, all these teams that have had 40-plus win season for. You want to know something? There's only been 3 teams that have hosted an NCAA tournament in the history. Wow. Florida State, Florida, and Miami. So in 2018, we became the 4th.
Wow.
And we hosted a regional. We ended up winning that regional. We went to a super regional out of this. Then all of a sudden we hit COVID and everybody had to kind of reset. Then we go ahead and win 36 games in 23. Then we win 41 and, go to a regional and beat Alabama. Then last year we knock off Florida, NC State. We've had some really good wins. We sell out our crowds now. We renovated the stadium 3 years ago and made it more fan friendly. And so I think we're just going up steps. Step was 18, going to a regional and hosting it. Super regional, building the stadium. Now, having an over 500 record at home against top 25 teams,
right?
Things that we've started to crown those wrongs. And, when my time is done here, I still think we've been ranked as high as number 4 in the country in 2018. We've had votes. I still believe that we're not that far away, especially with the new changing era of baseball and rev share and all these things we're doing. We're going to be able to compete as a top 50 program, which we've proven for the last 4 years.
For sure.
Let's get ourselves in that top 25, and anybody can win, 5 games, and all of a sudden you find yourself in Omaha. So I really feel like we can do that here.
So it's really interesting. I love hearing what you're saying, because you're also a guy with a lot of energy. You have like you said, you came in, you got a first pitch dinner that you're doing, but you're still throwing BP, you're still teaching infield, you get your hands on all these things. Seems really, enjoyable. the things a couple of things I wanted to ask you, and you're kind of my go-to guy on this.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that you've talked about and you've told me, because you're on some committees and you have some access that I don't have, and like a lot of the things you've always told me have come to pass. So right now, correct me if I'm wrong, there is the opt-out and the opt-in, which you had told me about before anyone knew what the heck that was. That is now, as of this 26 season, that's teams are under, they have to basically declare one of those two, correct?
They do. So what it basically means is that to be, in the Division I side of things, there's 353 schools that operate Division I sports programs. So you had a chance to opt in last June. And at that point, about approximately 295 of the 353 opted in. And some of them chose not to opt out. Now, what does opting in means? Opting in means that you now can have autonomy to run your athletic program. So if you choose to give all your money to one sport, you can do that. Okay. You can cut back on another sport. You can fund them all. It takes away any of the scholarship caps you had before. Okay. So it says your roster at baseball is 34. You can offer 34 scholarships. Your beach volleyball team has 20. You can give them 20 scholarships. Now, mind you, your AD in your school is going to give you what you can do.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that because you get 34, that Florida baseball is giving away 34 scholarships, you know?
Right.
So opting in allows you to have the autonomy to decide where you want to spend your money. It also allowed you to kind of take back in-house the craziness of the last 3 years of NIL, which is name, image, and likeness.
Yep.
That is the ability for a student athlete to sell their name, image, and likeness for income. So over the last 3 years, it was wild, wild west. You could have, what is the value of a student athlete? Well, you want to know what it is? What someone will pay.
Correct.
So someone that wants to have you come to their house and give a lesson to them and sign an autograph and they'll pay you $1 million. Well, I guess you could do that.
Right.
A little out of control. So what it does, it reins it in that says that now you can now offer that through your university and take it back in-house. So basically you can give now, if you opt in, up to $20.5 million of revenue sharing to your student athletes. Now, every school cannot do that.
Of course,
there's Power 4 schools that are having a struggle getting a $20.5 million, but it kind of gives a minimum and a maximum now of what you can decide to do. So if you have I'm sure they're going to love me to say this, but if you're Vermont ice hockey, and I know the AD there very well, Jeff Schulman, so I can say that. So they don't have football, they don't have baseball. So in theory, they can go make an account that has $20.5 million of money they funded it, and they can give the whole darn thing to their men's ice hockey program and share a little bit with the female ice hockey program and go win 2 national championships if they choose to.
Right.
So it allows you to do that when you're opting in. Now, if you're opted out, that doesn't mean that you're not playing Division I. You can still play Division I sports. It's just that you have a little bit more restrictions on NIL. And, eventually my theory is that you're not going to be eligible for championships. Like they want everybody over there. The one thing that you'll see is like the Patriot League and the Ivy League chose not to opt in.
Right.
Because they don't really offer scholarships anyway. They're offering all financial aid packages. They already play limited schedules, right? Like we know the Ivy League only plays like 47 games or 48 games. So does the Patriot. They limit some things.
Yes.
So they chose to opt out because as long as they can hold on to their NCAA automatic qualifier, they're cool. They're like, we're already doing this.
Right.
So the other schools that are on the other side of the fence, they're either not going to opt in because they can't afford it, I think, or they just had to get their ducks in order and say, look, this happened a little bit too fast for us. And you can see now there's a lot of those schools that are opting in and making announcements because they have this whole calendar year to be the second opt-in and join that other side of things of those schools that are over there.
Okay. So one quick question on that, one longer one. Can you Google what schools have opted in and not? You can.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you
so
can
that's
see
public
who's opted in. There's a graphic out there I've seen, and I think it's like, the 18 school or 16 schools from the Patriot and the Ivy, and then there's a lot of schools I know just on memory, like in the Northeast Conference, that decided not to opt in. Right. I think there's 1 or 2 in our conference. There's 1 or 2 in the America East. But again, like Central Arkansas is a great example in our league. They didn't opt in June, but they just announced they're opting in. So like a lot of the schools that aren't Patriot or Ivy, I believe, are just like kind of like getting themselves aligned to opt in as they go forward this year.
Okay. My second longer question, and I have talked to a few people, and I think I understand this. From a baseball specific standpoint, your roster is 34. Mm-hmm. How about extra guys? I think there's a
Sure.
term for it now. I forget
Yep.
what it. So,
Yep.
is there a date you have to announce the 34? Can you have as many extra guys that don't count as that? So, could you just
Yeah.
explain that if you don't mind?
Yeah. Again, really confusing. So I'll do the best to try to make it
Yes.
from what I know and what I've learned. So basically, right before the judge approved the House settlement back in May, she said, "Hey, look, whoa, whoa, whoa. These roster limits are really bad.
Right.
Like, I understand you guys don't want to be having unlimited rosters and you want a roster cap, but what about the coach that promised the kid that's a freshman on the team and he's going to cut the kid? What about the recruit that just signed an NLI? They're just going to cut that kid. What about the verbal commitment, which is a verbal contract in some states that's legal and binding to the verbal commitment you gave in Kentucky or in Alabama, for example?"
Yeah.
So what this judge decided to say is you're going to take a one-time and you're going to do what's called, you're going to DSA them.
That's what the term is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called designated student athletes. So what that means is that on your current roster, you got to have 34, but if you're on non-scholarship and you're a walk-on, you could put the tag DSA by them. So if I go in the portal today, I'll see a bunch of people in the portal for next year already, and it'll say DSA or not.
Oh, wow.
Now, if they're DSA'd at, let's use 𝐬𝐾ON, for example, because it's right there. Let's say Jimmy Pender's DSA'd a kid that was one of his walk-ons. Well, he keeps that DSA tag for his entire eligibility.
Wow.
So I can take him down to Stetson as a transfer and add him to my 34 and make him the 35th because he's a DSA no matter where he goes.
Oh.
So Florida's got a couple DSAs right now. Well, they might go in the portal. I might add them next year. They're really good players that just didn't get a chance to play. The other rule is being a spring sport outside of the DSAs, we don't have to have our 34 roster in until December 1st.
Okay.
So in theory, I could go out to a guy this summer and be like, "Hey, man, you want to give it a shot? Your dreams come to Stetson. I might have room. I might not. But on December 1st, if I'm being truthful with you, I got to either cut you off my roster or I can add you to my roster by having somebody quit, somebody fail off, or somebody become injured."
Right.
And as a head coach, you got a roster in the fall, and then all of a sudden fall meetings happen. And first off, one kid goes bing, and he's out for the spring. So you're like, all right, there's one. And then somebody walks in your office and says, "Coach, I love you, but this school stuff ain't for me. Like I'm going to junior college. I'm out."
Right.
And then another kid walks in your office and you're like, "Hey, buddy, like you got 4 Fs. What's going on here?"
Right.
And he's like, "I quit." So like, if that happens, you could, before December 1st, you can take those people that aren't DSA'd and move them to your 34. If they're DSA'd, they can stay there no matter what.
So but can a DSA play in the spring?
Yep. You can play. You can play.
You can play.
Yep. You can play.
Oh, it's interesting. Okay.
They're on top of your roster is what it is. As long as they got the DSA tag, they're DSA'd on the roster. So in theory, think of it this way. Next year, I could have my 34-man roster. I could jump in the portal and go get 34 DSAs, and I could have a roster of 68, and everybody could be eligible to play.
Now, is that DSA temporary based on what the judge said, or it's going to stick?
It's just that year. So that's it.
Oh,
no more. Yeah, no more. That's it. So you had to DSA the guys in July. If you didn't DSA them there, they're done. So there's no more like, "Oh, I promised this kid when he was an 8th grader." Nope. Like that was only for this past year. You had the month of July to DSA your kids. In fact, I reflect back. I think it was only 2 weeks. We had to DSA them from like July 1st to July 15th. Now that DSA situation is gone.
Okay,
I can't go out there and next year, like take kids on my roster now.
Right.
DSA them. No,
got it. Okay.
That was a one-shot deal.
Okay. 2 more main questions for you. One is your book, Walkoff Winning.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the inspiration to write it? Can you talk about what, the message is? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So another crazy story. We got all these stories, Wayne. So when I was at Maine, I was 35-year-old head coach trying to take over this program, the World Series. I'm like, at Manhattan, I did it I feel it, I surely just tried to outwork everybody.
Right.
And I had, I tried to raise money. I tried to build a field with sod. And I tried to get Florida kids and all the New York kids. We just if you were there at the game at midnight, I was staying at 12:01. Like that's kind of what I'm talking. So I get to Maine and I'm like, all right, I got to step up my game. Then what do I do? Well, there's this thing called culture. There's this thing called locker rooms. Like, and I started to become like, how did I do it at Manhattan? We weren't all that good. We had some guys that could hit home runs, but I was like, those tough son of a guns and my college teams, we weren't always the most talented, but we were just really tough. We had culture, right? That locker room. So what did I start to do? 2008, 2009, I'm starting to read all these books. Reading Coach K's book. How did Bobby Knight do it? How did Bear Bryant do it? How did John Wooden do it? Well, guess what? They all won championships, but they had all the resources. They had the best stadiums. They had the best tradition. Try to win at Maine when there's snow on the ground and you're shoveling your field. But 2008 hit, and Blake, my AD, was like, hey, buddy, we need to all meet. We're going to drop volleyball indoor. We're dropping soccer. And the rest of you coaches, there's a housing crunch. There's a financial crunch. I need you to fundraise. So I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to fundraise. So I run out. I meet all these donors. Hey, man, can you give 50 grand to keep the program going? But really quickly, I understood, holy cow, I'm in front of Harold Alfont. He built Dexter's shoes. He sold Dexter's shoes in 1978 or 79 for $400 million of Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock, not the $400 million. Here's Larry Mahaney. He started up an oil company. Here's Herb Sargent. He has the largest freaking paving company in New England. So I started to be like, how did you guys do it? And they're like, oh man, I went bankrupt. Hey man, I embezzled. I went to jail. I had to come back from like all these people had success and failures, and they became bank presidents and generals and senators, like Senator Susan Collins. So I was like, why am I reading these stupid books that are like childish play when did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, sorry. I think my computer just screwed up for a second. Well, maybe you got my screen. For some reason, I lost it. But
yeah, I see. It looks just fine from here.
All right. Well, somehow my thing went out. But anyway, I'll keep talking with no video. I started to interview these people, how they were so successful. And what I came to find out is they had the culture code, and it was like getting over adversity, getting over failure, having great attitudes. So I started to bring this back to Maine baseball. But at the time, I started to have some of these people be like, hey, you've learned so much. Can you be one of our speakers at our, corporate event?
Yep.
And I'm like, you wanted me to talk to you about bunting? Like, what are you crazy? They're like, no. Like, you've done such a great job in leadership and all these different things. So I'm like, all right, well, I started to do these corporate speakings in 2010 and 11. And it led to another one, led to another one. Then I'm doing these things for New Balance. I'm doing things for, financial institutions and police departments. And everybody was like, hey, where's your book?
Oh, right.
And I'm like, right. I can't write an email or a book. I share the story a lot. So I was throwing in my PowerPoints. So fast forward to Stetson. I've now got 150 corporate speaking events under my belt in leadership and how it relates from business to back to sport. So I get the Stetson job and I run into a guy down here and I meet him. His name's John Gordon.
Yep.
Very famous author. Has wrote The Energy Bus, Power Positive Team, The Coffee Bean.
Yep.
And he's like, man, I heard you speak and what you're doing. He's like, let's co-write a book together. And I'm like, awesome. He's at a time where he's really cranking and he's getting a couple college coaches, pro coaches. So fast forward a couple weeks, I go up to New Jersey and to Hoboken, New Jersey, and talk to all the editors before and all these people that are agents and stuff. And they invite me up and I go to Wiley & Sons, the publishing company, and go to the 10th floor and they're like, boom, they open up the elevator and there's a champagne bottle and a cake. They're like, congratulations, you're published. And John Gordon's like, hey man, I'm busy doing another project. You're on your own, buddy. You're writing your own book with Wiley. And so I ended up, partnering with them and had a great editor and a great illustrator and all. I learned about index editing and all this, how to write a book. And basically you just write your words down. They give you a great editor to make you sound good. And I just had the ability with what my thoughts were. I basically had all these ideas. So the book Walkoff Winning is basically 19 chapters. And each chapter is a value that I learned from my time in the corporate world trying to get money back to Maine baseball. But I built relationships with successful people and they taught me things like attitude and energy and integrity and image and communication. I can go on for many teams and I write about those little stories that I learned. And I say, this is how I kind of applied those, back to my teams. And pounded out 19 chapters with this book. And now I still do corporate speakings. It was kind of cool writing it. It went to number 3 on the Amazon list.
Wow.
I got a lot of big speaking engagements because of it.
Wow.
Got to meet even better people. And I probably to this day still do like maybe 8 or 9 of them a year. I just got back from one. I was doing a financial institute, a home lending company up in the New England area. And I got one coming up in New Orleans for a hotel chain. So I still do some stuff, and it's just on the leadership and how you build a culture is really what it is, and how hard it is every single day to put attention to that. And I could be the greatest baseball coach in the country with the greatest talent, but if I don't have that locker room right, you're not going to win. And if you're trying to build a hotel chain, or you're trying to build a financial institution, or you're trying to have a great school system, or you're trying to run a police department, it's the same thing. So that's really what the book is, and the history of how I wrote Walkoff Winning.
Well, that's cool because it kind of puts together all your background and all your values. It really is neat the way it came about. Yeah. That's kind of fits you perfectly. That's really that's awesome. And kind of on that note, which my last question is, you're quote unquote kind of the face of the Mohegan Sun World Baseball Coach. I mean, you're a staple. You're there every year. You get huge people that follow you.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Did you meet Rick Orlick some way? Do you do many of those besides Mohegan Sun? Because obviously you're good at it.
I tell you, Mohegan Sun used to be over at Foxwoods, and it was run by, what was his name? Kevin Hinch, I think his name was. He worked for the Norris Navigators, and we all did that clinic years ago, 25 years ago, and it went for 2 or 3 years. And then Rick Orlick's group bought it, and I was their first speaker. I was one of the first team that spoke there. And, I think what's happened is I have a passion for teaching.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I've always thought is that we get this almighty hat of I'm a Division I coach, or I'm a college coach, or I'm a high school coach, and we think that's it. And I'm a constant lifelong learner. Yeah. And I think when I work on my weaknesses, it makes me a little bit stronger. So for me, it was building culture. Like that's why I tried to become so good, not good at it, but just try to invest in that.
Yes.
But I also, if someone's going to play for our program, or if someone's going to pay me to get up in front of you, I'm going to dive into how we teach infield, or how we teach the tag play, or how we teach our outfielders. So I think with all the speaking I've done in the baseball realm, if I'm on that stage, I'm not up there to tell you my stories of where I got to, right, or how I made the major leagues, or how I become a Hall of Famer. I'm there to say, hey, man, if you got a bunch of guys that you're working with, or girls, this is how I've done it, which has worked. And this is what alligator technique is. And this is what tuck, turn, and throw is. And this is what my drills are. This is how I teach outfield. So the only reason I keep coming back is I think people leave the speeches I talk about, whether it's base running, hitting, offense, defense, pitching, they got a notepad full of like, oh, I can do that in the gym. And I've been there.
Right.
I worked at Manhattan.
Yes, of course.
I worked at Wentworth. I had to share a court at Manhattan College with the softball. So like I've tried to live in everybody's shoes and teach baseball in a hallway when it's snowing out in a school system, So I try to give them things that they can go back to. And yes, Mohegan is kind of the staple. I've asked not to go because I'm running out of stuff. I feel like but I've been fortunate enough to speak 3 times at the ABCA National Convention. And when you speak at that one, you come off the stage if you do a good job, and you got every state organizer is like, hey, man, here's my card. Will you speak in Colorado and Ohio and Texas? And so I've had a chance to speak at a lot of really cool state organizations also. I love the Ohio group. They're awesome. I got a chance to go to Colorado a couple of years ago. I'm going to be up in New Jersey for my 4th year in a row here in December, doing the High School Coaches Association there. So I still try to do a couple of them a year just to kind of give back. And by the way, as soon as I get done off that stage and answer all the questions, I go to street clothes and I sit in the crowd and I try to pick up someone from the next speaker that's going on that I can take back and teach my guys.
Yeah. And you said something which is true. I mean, coaching is teaching. And I've met a lot of, I've just like you have, I've met coaches at higher levels that you would think are incredible, but they really don't teach. And I've met guys that are at a high school program and they're absolutely incredible. I mean, a guy that, I don't know if you ever saw him speak at Mohegan Sun, 𝐾𝐨, who
he's awesome.
Was basically a D3, not even a good play. And his ascendance in the world of baseball is because he's a great teacher. He's a perfect example of, if you're really good at what you do, it will get recognized for sure.
Exactly right.
Yeah. All right, Trim, you got me fired up. I'm ready to go. I don't know. I wish I could go back to school. I wish I was good enough to come down there and play for you. But
we had 2 days of rain. We had a great week of practice. We're just starting our fall season. How crazy is that? Where at Maine I'd be already done, but we don't start our fall season here until late October because of the weather is so hot and rainy. And I got practice here in about an hour, and we got
and that makes sense because now that fall will in essence have a little break and it'll lead right into the spring season.
I love it. I tell you,
yeah.
Here's where Steve Trimper was a liar. All right, I'm going to call myself out. All those years at Maine, I was like, it's not that big of a deal. We got the dome, we got the turf, we got the parking lot. We put our pants on just like you guys. Holy cow, what was I thinking? I mean, we're out here taking ground balls. I'm having guys take live reads in the outfield. This is the difference. My Maine teams were never the same on February 15th than they were when I went to regional. They were way better.
Right.
Here, we get so much more opportunity to play live in November, December, take a couple weeks off, scrimmage outside, and then play Maine, and we don't drop a fly ball. We don't miss a relay. We go first to third really good. Things that Maine just quite haven't figured out just yet, which they will when we play them in a regional, and they'll probably kick our butts. But you're ahead of them, and that's the advantage that you have when you're in a warm weather school like this.
Yeah, totally. All right, Trimp, you're the man. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
You got it, Wayne. Thanks for having me on, man. And go Hats, and I'll see you soon when I'm up there in the Northeast.
And I'll be down in New Smyrna to visit my dad in December, and I'll text you and I'll come by and see you.
We'll love to have you over.
All right, buddy.
See you, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan Podcast by College Baseball Advisors. Again, this is your host, Wayne Mazzoni, longtime college coach, current owner of collegebaseballadvisor.com. For more information about getting yourself or your son help in the recruiting process, please visit that. I really hope you enjoyed the episode today with Steve Trimper, head baseball coach at Stetson. He's a wealth of information, ton of energy, as you can tell. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, the World Baseball Coaches Convention, which takes place every January at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. It's in its 23rd year. This year, the dates are January 15th to 17th. A big piece of that convention has always been Pete Walker, the current Blue Jays pitching coach. And as I record this now, they had an 18-inning game last night where they lost on a walk-off with Freddie Freeman. But Pete is battling for a World Series, and he's an awesome guy who's always at the event as well. For more information, again, on the convention, visit baseballcoachesclinic.com, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you.